So we got ourselves a 2 holes through the 1/8 inch. That's like, fuck me. We got. We got ourselves a new toy from Harbor Freight. It's an 8-inch drill press. It's the smallest version that they offer, also the cheapest. We obviously bought it with a coupon because we like to save money. So we had a 20% off coupon and ended up paying about $44 for it before tax. The reason we're buying it is to continue fabrication for some parts for our bus conversion, which if you haven't checked out, you should do so. It's on the same channel. The parts that we're fabricating are for the future roof deck, so we're making the supports for that. The roof supports primarily consist of the 1 3/4 inch tube and a little piece of 1/8 inch flat stock. So we're drilling 2 holes where we're going to have our lag bolts going through, and obviously we need some sort of spatial tolerance between the two so that everything lines up. Perfect application with the drill press, so let's hop into that. Harbor Freight, obviously great place to go for cheap shit. I mean, toys. So we got our we got the drill press. Like I said, it's a 5-speed 8-inch drill press. Not much to it. The item number is 60238. In case you were wondering, smallest one they offer. So we'll show you a little bit of the assembly process, and then we're going to go ahead and start drilling some holes with it. So we're going to be doing 1/2-inch holes, so it'll test it out pretty well. All right, so we have the plate here. It's got all the oil on it. It's got a really cheap piece of, I guess it is like a metal tape that's bent on for the angle that this is adjusted to. Nothing too fancy. I mean, none of it is going to be fancy. It's like I say with everything that I touch is, you know, you get what you pay for, and so you can't go and buy a $40 drill press and expect it to operate like a, you know, $300, $400 drill press or anything like that. We have our little chuck here, so that looks good. Chuck operates smooth. It's got the key. We've got our center post, which is a lot lighter than I would expect it to be, but should be just fine. So nice center post there. All right, bottom plate. So we can see pretty clearly how this is all going to go together. There's slots over. Bada bing, bada boom. Take the motor out. This is all in all pretty light duty, which is why the motor is pretty light too. But sharp little unit, not too bad looking. There's the belt. Looks like it's already tensioned pretty well. You want to make sure you have the right tension on the belts, which you can set by setting the relationship of this wheel, the relationship between the distance between the 2 wheels sets the actual tension. You can actually slide the motor head back and forth a little bit, just a very small amount, which will give you that different tension. Alright, so we're going to jump into the assembly process. Instructions are for people who like to do things right, so I probably won't read them. Best way to learn is to just do. These guys are threaded down here. We have 3 bolts. We have 3 washers, 3 lock washers and 3 standard washers. So I think we could safely assume where those go. So I'm going to put the lock washers on the bolts themselves. The threads are in the bottom plate here. I like the way that looks. We get black and black, so I'm assuming that it's got to go on top and lock itself in there. So what's the worst that could happen? We have to take a few bolts out because we did it wrong. It can only be so hard, right? If they're assembling these over in China, those little critters, putting them all together, can't be too difficult. Yep. Crap. Out of all those, nothing fits. The bolt size is just over, the head of the bolt is just over 1/2 inch, and I just don't happen to have the right size, so we're going to do this the hard way. The harder way, which is also the longer way, so you just get more time with me. Aren't you happy? Finger tight. There's not a lot of space, so even if you had a socket, it wouldn't really fit that well. It's kind of a pain in the butt. Could have done a better job to at least give you enough space to fit a socket in there, but it's not too bad at the end of the day. Half the reason we get toys is to assemble them, right? It's Friday, so I'm delirious. Tight enough. Good stuff. So let's put this guy on. So that loosens her up. That goes down. That tightens it. That wasn't too difficult. Completely manageable. So let's take the motor assembly. Few tidbits that I should have thrown in there. The wheels here have 5 different tiers. And guess what? It's a 5-speed drill press. That might have something to do with the speeds. So if you adjust the belt, where the belt is on the different tiers, you will in fact affect the overall speed of the drill. So one thing to keep in mind, I'm just going with the stock setting. I didn't make any extra adjustments. Alright, so with the motor assembly, you have 2 set screws here and here. So that's going to be what tightens it down and make sure that it's all the way down. So you might have to finagle it a little bit. I'm going to point it towards me so that I can see pretty closely whether it's lined up, because I want it to be more or less central with the bottom platform there. So they give us 2 Allen wrenches in the set. So I got the bottom set screw done. So just take the larger of the 2 Allen wrenches they give you, goes right in the set screw there, and tighten that puppy down. When you're drilling down on something, you don't want the torque on the motor to start going on, to start moving this all around, messing up your work. So, alright, so they're about flush, just over flush, and I don't want to keep torquing them down because I don't think that the actual tube itself, the mounting tube, I don't think that's very solid. I could probably torque it enough to bend that, so we're just going to keep it like that. So let's take the chuck and the key. I'm sure they didn't give us a place to put the chuck key while we're not using it. Of course. It can't be how easy it is. I never actually installed a chuck on it, but there's no other way to really do it. Something doesn't seem right. There should be a set screw or something. Yeah, I guess that's all you do. So we're gonna put the handles in the feed. I don't know what you call it, the feed wheel. That's what I would call it. Sounds good, right? I think. So these little guys raise and lower the drill itself. All we did was screw these suckers in there, getting it nice and tight. So that works. Pretty straightforward. All they say on the chuck, which is pretty amazing, is they say to use a piece of wood, which is probably a good thing to do, but I got a piece of metal sitting here. And they say to make sure everything's lined up and then just push pretty hard against it. So you might have heard it snap in place there. I heard it kind of lock in place. So that's what you want to happen. So they say to put a piece of wood, probably because wood's softer, has a little bit more give, and then just make sure everything's lined up as best as possible, and then just force the chuck into the wood and it should snap it in there. I did want to mention that when you put the chuck down, you want to make sure that it's in the completely open position. What I mean by putting the chuck down, when you're installing the chuck itself, one thing you want to make sure, and it might be kind of obvious, but I could also see it easily being overlooked, is that you want the chuck in the completely open position. You don't want these teeth to be sticking out down here. So completely open position means that it's wound. The chuck is, you have to turn the chuck so that there's nothing sticking out of the bottom, as if you were putting the largest drill bit that you could fit inside of it. So right now we're in an open position. It's not all the way open, but it would be good enough for pushing the chuck against. You just want to make sure it's not in the closed position where these teeth are sticking out. So you'll see as I close it further and further, here come the teeth down here. You don't want those sticking out when you're forcing this chuck against a piece of wood. So you want to make sure you wind it all the way up until those teeth are completely inside of the chuck, to make sure that when you push it down, nothing's misaligned and you don't damage those teeth. Just keep that in mind. Now that we've got all that together, it is pretty light duty. Hopefully it works. But of course, they have a light on it. I brought some electrons over so we could plug this puppy in, get the motor going. There's our handy dandy light. Nothing but the best. Not too much to it. So we're gonna see how this 1/2" drill bit goes through the metal. This 1 3/4 tube is 090 thick. Is it 090? Yeah. Yeah. We're gonna say 090 thick. I'll verify that, but I'm pretty sure 090. So we got it clamped. The way I clamped it, I've got the back of the tube against the post here, keep it from sliding. I'm gonna try to show you the best angle, so shouldn't really be that much harder for me, but we'll turn this puppy on and see what happens. You might have seen it stall there for a second as I was getting a little deeper into the metal. Even though I was putting down an even amount of pressure, it was still a little bit too much for the motor to handle, so it got hung up, immediately backed off and went slow again, and it went through just fine. One of the issues that I've now found with this is obviously you don't have a lot of drill space because of the length of the bit here. So I can't actually go completely through this 1 3/4 tube. I can feel underneath that I'm barely puncturing, but I don't have any more stroke left in the drill to get to the bottom. So it's to get through the bottom. So it's kind of unfortunate, because what I'm gonna have to do is loosen this guy up and move it up a little bit. Before I move it, I should have shown you that I had it almost at the maximum it could go, so that the drill wasn't actually touching the face of the metal when I started. So I was just about as high up as I could have gone. The unfortunate thing here is, because I have to raise it slightly, it's gonna be hard to get it lined up. The whole point of using a drill press is so you don't have to move your work. And now it's gonna be slightly off. Hopefully this doesn't damage the unit, we'll see. Having a little bit of a tough time there. There it goes. You could see there, it actually just about punched out the bottom instead of drilling through it. I don't know what the heck's up with that. So you can see this little piece of metal here came out of the bottom of the tube. It looks like the drill was almost more punching the metal than it was drilling through it. It was starting, and then it looks like it got to the point where it was the metal was weak enough that the force of the chuck going down was actually what forced that little piece out. Obviously we would expect more of these little flakes that we have on the floor, or little shavings, but instead it just kind of punched out a circular piece. I've personally never seen that before. Granted, I don't use drill presses all the time, but not really the way it's supposed to go as far as I know. Also, I don't like the fact that I have to start the drill inside of a hole that I've already started, that I've already drilled, in order to get this to go all the way through, but I really need that hole to be lined up in the same axis to go all the way through. So I don't want to try matching the holes up by drilling one side and flipping it over and drilling the other. That would defeat, once again, the purpose of the drill press. So anyhow, it's all a learning experience. Let's take this piece off and take a look at the hole we made. These drill bits that I'm using, they're really good. They're not high accuracy or anything, and they're not like high-speed steel or anything like that. So yeah, you can see on the back end that it did kind of punch out the hole itself. You can kind of see the extra crud that's right around the edge. It wouldn't have done that had it been a nice clean hole there. So unfortunate that that happened, but all in all, can't complain too much. The hole's in and it'll work for what I need it for. So yeah, not the best drill. If you were getting this unit to go through softer woods, I would say that it would probably work pretty well. Going through the metal that we're trying to go through, which isn't any, it's not like it's stainless steel or anything, we're just dealing with cold roll steel, so nothing major. But it seems to have a little bit of an issue with it. And also, because there's not a lot of work area, you know, in reality, we really went with the wrong drill for what we want to do. Shouldn't have gone with the smallest, cheapest one that they had to offer, but sometimes you just try to get things done on a dime, right? So, for what it's worth, the saw is, you know, it is what it is. If you're doing small, little projects with wood or smaller pieces of metal, it might be the perfect drill for you, especially if it's only going to see intermittent use. This isn't something that I would use on a regular basis every day. It's just not sturdy enough, but it is, like I said, 40 bucks. You can't really complain when it was 40 bucks, right? I think that accurately sums up this this little guy here. Not much else to it. You can make small adjustments here and there, but at the end of the day, this is what you get. So if you're on the market for a $40 to $60 drill press, and you're doing some small work around the house, or just want something to go through little pieces of wood, it might be a good option for you. Otherwise, I would probably step it up. Either try a larger option from Harbor Freight, which is going to be pretty cheap, or shop around for something on Craigslist. I almost bought a Delta off of Craigslist for a decent price, so there's deals to be had, and unfortunately, this just isn't as good of a deal as I thought it would be, because although it was only 40 bucks, it's only so useful, and I won't be using it as frequent because it's just not going to get the job done for everything I need. So there you have it. That wraps up the Central Machinery 8-inch drill press from Harbor Freight.